Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever, stopped to think how one tiny detail in an ancient text could actually, well, connect to something so fundamentally human, a practice you see, everywhere? Today, in this deep dive, we're really getting into the fascinating world of memory aids, and specifically something really simple, the knot. We're starting with its surprising role in an ancient commandment.
Right. And our main source here is fringes, knots, and memory, universal reminders. It starts with the Jewish commandment about fringes, the tzitzit, and how they're tied to memory. But then, and this is what's so interesting, it broadens right out. It shows how these kinds of practices, using knots and similar things, are actually global, ancient stuff.
Yeah. So our mission today really is to explore how something as simple as a fringe, or just, knots on a string, became this powerful tool. For memory, sure, but also accounting. Even communication across so many cultures and times that almost feels weirdly low-tech for something so important, doesn't it? Especially now. So let's start right at that source text you mentioned. The Book of Numbers, Midbar 15.39, it talks about these fringes, 𝘂𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗶, and says, just looking at them should remind you of all the commandments. It's very direct, like a physical reminder almost.
Exactly. And what's really striking is that this whole section, this commandments, recited every day.
Yeah.
Right at the end of the Shema Israel prayer. And to kind of solidify that memory link, you have these old rabbinic interpretations, like in the Midrash Tanhuma. They use gematria, the numerical value of the letters.
Oh, right, gematria.
Yeah, so the word tsitsit adds up to 600. Then you add the 8 chords and the 5 knots they traditionally used.
Yeah.
And you get 613.
600. Okay, yeah, that rings a bell. That's the traditional number of mitzvot, the commandments in the Torah, isn't it?
That's the number, yeah.
But wait, here's the thing that gets me. You said the Torah itself, it just mentions the fringes. It doesn't actually say anything about knots, does it? So where'd the knots come from?
Precisely. You nailed it. That's a really crucial point. The Torah mentions fringes, tsitsit, the obligation to actually tie knots in them. That shows up later. The earliest reference we have is in the Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Manichot. So it shows how these things evolve, how interpretation layers onto the original text.
Okay, so that difference, fringes versus knots, that actually sparked a bit of a debate, didn't it? Yeah. Among some pretty major thinkers.
It did. You've got Rashi, a huge name in medieval commentary.
Right.
He believed looking at the knots themselves was what jogged the memory, the physical knots.
Okay.
But then Nahmanides, another giant, he argued differently. He stuck closer to the Torah text and said it was seeing the blue thread, the 𝘂𝘂𝗶𝘁 woven in. That was the reminder.
Ah, interesting. So knots versus the blue thread. Two different ways of thinking about how memory works with this physical object.
Exactly. And if we kind of zoom out and look at this through an anthropological lens, it gets even more interesting. Because anthropology really seems to back Rashi's view on the knots. Using knots, just simple knots, as a way to record things for memory, for counting, maybe even basic writing. That's one of the oldest human practices we know of. It's everywhere.
It's not just a religious thing, then. It's more fundamental, a basic human cognitive tool, almost predating writing itself.
That's a great way to put it. It really is fundamental. And that universality, that's what's truly striking when you look beyond this one specific tradition. Knot tying as a recording technique. It's ancient and it's global.
Right. So where else do we see this pop up?
Well, I mean, take China. They have this tradition, incredibly ancient, attributing writing by knots. They called it quipus or quipus, similar term to the Andean one and the mastery of fire.
Wow. Fire and knot writing.
Yeah. Both attributed to the same mythical emperor, 𝘂𝘁. They're sort of Chinese Prometheus. It just shows how basic, how foundational these things were seen to be.
And it wasn't just China, right? The source mentioned it's, well, all over.
All over is right. Africa, other parts of Asia, the Hawaiian Islands, the Americas. I mean, the list goes on. It makes you wonder how that happened. Did it spread or...
Or did people just figure it out independently?
That's what E.B. Tylor, the anthropologist, argued. He thought, because it's such a simple idea, tie a knot in your handkerchief to remember something.
Huh. I still do that sometimes. Seriously.
See, it's intuitive. So Tylor suggested it was probably invented again and again, independently by different cultures. Just basic human ingenuity at work.
That makes sense. But then some cultures took this simple idea and really ran with it, made it incredibly complex, like Peru, right? With the quipus.
Oh, absolutely. Peru's probably the most famous example. The quipu, which is Quechua for knot, wasn't just simple knots. It was this incredibly sophisticated system. We're talking different types of knots, different positions, different colors of cords, all encoding information. And they use these for, get this, something like 4,500 years. It's astonishing.
4,500 years. That's mind-blowing. And weren't there similar things in North America too, like wampum belts?
Yes, exactly. Things like wampum or sewons,
Yeah.
used by various Native American peoples. These weren't always just knots, but often ropes or belts with beads, sometimes stones or shells threaded onto cords. They were used for counting, certainly, maybe a form of writing or record keeping, but also held huge ritual and religious significance. They weren't just data storage. They were sacred objects, treaty records, historical narratives.
Okay, so we have tsitsit with knots, reminding of commandments, quipus recording data, wampum holding history. It really does seem like there's a deep human need being met here, doesn't it? Using physical things to remember, to count, to connect. Are there parallels in other religions too? Maybe more focused on prayer or something?
Oh, definitely. It's a very widespread idea. Think about rosaries in Catholicism.
Right, for counting prayers.
Exactly. You use the beads to keep track of Hail Marys, our fathers. It's a physical aid for a spiritual practice. Very similar principle to the tsitsit, in a way. And you see it elsewhere, too. Muslims often use a mishpacha, typically with 99 beads for reciting the names of Allah. Buddhists and Hindus use mala beads, usually 108, for counting mantras.
So it's the same core idea, physical, tactile object, helping to focus the mind, count repetitions, or remember key elements of faith or practice.
Precisely. The physical act, the touching, the counting. It creates a rhythm. It grounds the abstract concept in something concrete. It's a powerful mnemonic and meditative tool.
So bringing this all together then, we started with this specific instruction about fringes in Jewish tradition, a single detail. But following that thread, looking at the knots, it led us on this journey, didn't it? Across time, across continents. And what we found is this really profound, universal human thing, using physical objects, especially knots, but also beads, shells, as these incredibly powerful tools. For memory, yes, but also for keeping accounts, for communicating, for holding on to knowledge.
It really is remarkable how something so simple, so basic, a string with knots, can carry so much weight. Historical weight, cultural weight, even personal significance. They act as this bridge, between abstract ideas like commandments or prayers or historical events and something tangible you can hold and see. They literally externalize memory. It's kind of like our earliest hard drives, in a way.
That's a great analogy, our earliest hard drives. So that leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it, for you listening right now? In our world today, overflowing with digital reminders, notifications, cloud storage, everything feels so, I don't know, intangible sometimes. What are your modern knots? What physical things, what tangible cues do you still use to remember what's important? Or maybe to connect with something deeper? How do these ancient tactile methods our ancestors used? How might they still echo, maybe in ways we don't even realize, in our lives today? Something to mull over.